Dr. Light and the rest of the villains are raising mayhem across the world. The news is outraged because of their unchecked events, but Superman is there to save the day. One man watches the news, appearing to cheer on the madness. In Metropolis, a cartoon Superman stops a couple of thieves in this Mickey Mouse-style animation. It is an ad that Clark and Lois watch, but she doesn't like it, but he explains that proceeds go to charity. Lois stresses to Superman that he has to protect his image so he can protect the world, when suddenly there is an explosion. A possessed man crumbles to dust in Superman's hand before a bad guy looking like Skeletor appears. He does the same, and Clark runs in the alley to change. Before the atomic skull can harm others, Superman arrives. He drags Skull through the air and slams him onto a rooftop. Skull hits him back before they fall off the building, but Superman won't stay down and screams his ears off. Superman asks him why he attacked people, and he reveals that they were just bait. They continue to fight across the streets until Superman finally has enough and sends him inside a lake that boils away. He holds himself back and finally brings him in. Later on, a bunch of workers at the docks find a group of elites flying through the air. They are up to something as their leader goes to find Superman, while Pamela kills a dog. Meanwhile, the world condemns Superman for doing damage and not killing Atomic Skull, but Superman replies that he's not a judge, jury, or executioner. Professor Baxter says that he should use his powers to fix the world, but Superman thinks that people are good, they just need help. Suddenly, two countries appear to start a war, and Superman takes off to check out the situation. Tanks and troops roll in, but suddenly a giant monster attacks. It obliterates the army, but then one of the elites stops them. Pamela joins in and sends a bunch of snakes that slice the monster in half. Superman is left speechless, but the monster like a hydra comes back in two. Superman steps in and takes them out, but they keep coming back. The elite come back to aid him when the telepathic leader communicates with him to stop holding back. Superman finally does, and shatters the monster. A dragon appears out of nowhere, but then it is suddenly sucked into nothing by a magician. Superman thanks the team for helping, and they all stare before vanishing away. Back in Metropolis, the Daily Planet is trying to figure out who this team is, and Clark gets the first scoop. The editor is impressed, but Lois is mad that she wasn't the one getting credit for once. Clark is still cautious of this new team, as he believes that something about them is off. Superman and Lois fly off to England after they learn that a woman has information about the new team, and of course, Lois wants the story all to herself. The woman claims to have raised the boy and asks the press for money. Lois and Superman watch before she takes off to find information. Suddenly, the leader confronts Superman, and they fly to the roof. He reveals his name is Manchester Black and takes Superman to talk somewhere else. Meanwhile, Atomic Skull is being held at a prison where he is being used to power the city. Back to the elites, Superman and Manchester meet them. Their names are Coldcast, the Hat, and Menagerie, or Pam, as she thirsts over Superman. Superman says they need to talk and explains to Manchester that he can't probe around his mind while Manchester keeps rattling on. Superman allows him to show him a vision of their childhood, and boy, is it rough. Manchester took his sister and ran away from an abusive father. Together, they tricked people into robbing them. One summer, they had robbed quite a lot when suddenly his powers came to him and he was paralyzed. His sister Vera protected him from the cops when they accidentally pushed her in front of a train, and his powers took over and stopped the train. He then snaps Superman out of the vision and explains that he worked for the British Secret Service until he met the rest of the crew. They worked as freelancers, and then suddenly he gets an overwhelming vision. Nearby, there is an attack as people are trapped inside a train when the tunnel begins to flood and there is an impending tunnel collapse. Superman and the team arrive, and Superman puts the team to the test in trying to save the people. He dives deep underwater and starts lasering things off while the rest prepare. As the train gets overrun, Manchester starts lifting the structure with Superman. His team idly sits by until Hat sends a monster that freezes the water where they can land the structure. The people are safely taken out, and Superman thanks Manchester for it. They grab the culprits and Manchester starts roughing them up. He blood-bends them until Superman stops him and tells him that this isn't the way. Suddenly, Pam grabs him and kisses him, which Lois isn't too happy about. Clark tries to explain himself, but Lois is selfish and doesn't drop it. She tells Clark that she found no records of Manchester's story and that he could be lying. Suddenly, his face appears on the news, and he begins to warn every dictator and criminal in the world. He says that they will follow no laws while dealing with criminals, and the crowd begins to cheer for them. Superman gets dressed while the elite celebrate what happened. They still have the culprits and begin playing games with them while Pam tortures them for information. Meanwhile, at the Fortress of Solitude, Superman is trying to find information on the elite, but they're hiding between dimensions. Lois tries to comfort the frustrated Superman, who believes he has no place in the new world. But suddenly, Superman's bots detect their location, leaving Lois behind for good reason. At the same time, politicians try to warn of the elite and their ways, claiming there are laws for a reason. He believes that if the elite are unchecked, they will eventually target innocent people. Suddenly, a wide blast knocks out Superman. As he stumbles away, more people are down and a bunch of troops surround him. Before they finish him off, a soldier is broken in half, and the rest of the elite arrive to Superman's help. They lay waste to Superman's horror as more troops are massacred. With no hope of escaping, Manchester finishes them off before Superman passes out in front of them. He later wakes up to find tubes inside him, and they explain that they accidentally hit him with the giant blast. He's too weak to get up, but Pam is still thirsting over him. Manchester gives Superman a tour around the microorganism ship. Superman is angry they killed the soldiers, but Manchester says that they have to make sure the bad guys stay down for good. He believes that people don't get better, but Superman tries to explain that there are good people out there. Before Superman can do something about it, he's taken back. Meanwhile, Lois gets kicked out of British intelligence. Suddenly, she's called by a mystery woman, who tells her that she won't find any trace of Manchester. She hands Lois a flash drive, revealing herself to be his sister Vera, whom he talked about. One of Superman's robots finally comes by to pick up Lois. Back at the prison, Atomic Skull is still being used and abused when the power goes out, and he breaks free. At the Kent farm, Superman is unhappy with what is going on. Superman is doubting himself and his ways. Jonathan Kent explains to him that people just jump on the bandwagon, but in the end, good will prevail. Lois then calls him and orders him to come home. Back home, Skull is obliterating everything in his path. A car is stopped in midair, and it turns out that it's the elite. Suddenly, the politician's son runs off to get to the elite, who are getting their asses handed to them by Atomic Skull. Pam tries to hold him, but he shatters her. Manchester tries to intervene, but he too is blasted away. Finally, Superman arrives to stop this madness. He works with Manchester, but Skull has gotten more powerful. He blasts Superman away, and then Manchester tries to stop him till he can't. Superman comes back to bash Skull, but not for long, as he unleashes a giant wave of energy. The little kid's dad protects him and dies for it. Then Superman blasts Skull away. Hat forms a perimeter of samurais around as Skeletor keeps beating Superman. Superman asks Coldcast to absorb energy, as the rest of the team tries to hold Skull back. They all hold him while Coldcast does his thing, and he is taken out while the team crumbles. Before Manchester can end him, Superman tells him no. They are confused that Superman is still defending villains as the people are outraged all around. They egg him on to kill until Superman hurries to save Skull, but he's too late. The people cheer the team as they leave. Superman covers his body, and in the aftermath, the majority of people agree with the elite and have forgotten Superman. Superman flies high in the air and spots a bunch of children making fun of him. He goes back to his fortress to wallow away in sadness when Lois calls him. She tells him to get back home, and that Manchester's story is a load of crap. He had killed his father and killed dozens of people to save his sister. She tried to run the story, but it kept getting rejected. The rest of the team also have a long criminal record that has been wiped away by the British government. Suddenly, the elite arrive at the fortress, and Superman warns them once, but they don't believe he will hurt them. Pam is still thirsty over him. Manchester goes off on Superman for being obsolete, and they all vanish before he can catch them. Meanwhile, the war continues as fighter jets approach, but Superman steps in. One by one, the jets are taken apart. One jet fires, but Superman lasers them off before destroying the rest. But he doesn't harm anyone, though. He stacks the jets and demands an end to all conflict. The elite arrive and mock him, but Superman explains that there's still hope for peace. Manchester then shocks him to reveal that they had killed all the leaders. He explains that the war was going to escalate until the entire region was destroyed. Superman finally has enough and charges at Manchester in slow motion. After knocking him down, the team tries to stop him, but Manchester wants to have a word. He leaves him with a final threat. Later on, the news condemns the elite while still blaming Superman. Superman explains to Lois that they have to be stopped, but she says that they'll beat him because Superman isn't willing to go to the same measures, basically calling him a coward. Superman, however, still needs to show people the correct way. The next day, Lois wakes up alone, deservedly so. Clark left her a note, which is more than she deserves, and goes on to handle his business. Like an old Western standoff, Superman waits for the elite, who arrive in style. They call dibs on Superman, but he pleads with them to take the fight somewhere else far away from the people, and they oblige. They teleport to the moon, and Superman tells them that he tried to reason with them, but they won't listen. Manchester fires at Superman as the fight is broadcast live to the entire world. They all gang up on him as Superman tries to hold his own. Considering the odds, he's doing pretty well. But finally, they overwhelm him, and he gets beaten bit by bit. Hat pulls out his tricks and they continue to fight, but Superman is still there. He charges toward Manchester, who plays with his mind, giving him a seizure. Superman's agony is broadcast live to the world, while Manchester continues with the rest of the elite. They continue to destroy Superman till they blow a crater in the moon, and it appears that they've killed Superman. Lois is in tears watching this as the elite takes a trophy. Suddenly, Superman's voice echoes, and he says that he's going to give the people what they want. Pam is shot and poisoned as she screams in agony. They're horrified that Superman is now playing by their rules. Finally, Superman has had enough and takes off the training wheels. Hat tries to intervene, but Superman is too much. It appears that Superman has thought this through, and the rest escape. They get to the city to use the people like human shields. Superman takes out Coldcast before coming back for Manchester. He is completely unhinged. They have a Mexican standoff, and then Superman overwhelms Manchester. He punches through his shield, and Manchester tries to clap him away, but only Superman can do that. Superman walks through his attacks like they're nothing, and Manchester tries to clap him again, this time knocking him away. He uses his heat vision to take his powers away. He gives Manchester an instant lobotomy and slaps him around. Manchester pleads with Superman that this isn't him, and the little kid arrives to confront him. The people are horrified by what Superman has become, and suddenly, Superman admits that he was only playing. He only did this to show people the ugly side of violence if he became like them. It turns out that Superman's bots were there the whole time to protect everyone. He also says that Manchester's sister helped him. He didn't kill anyone, and the bots took them away. He allowed them to beat him for a while, until his bots arrived. And finally, the ship agreed to help Superman in exchange to return to her dimension. Superman then vows to never stop fighting, but under his own conditions. Superman goes back to Lois, but she's only concerned with the cameras and headlines. They fly away and kiss at the end of the movie. This was a different tone than the average Superman film. It felt more political and philosophical. It also tackled the question of, what if Superman stopped holding back? And also the morality of his decision to keep giving bad guys chances over and over again. We certainly loved Manchester, who reminded us a bit of the comical Constantine. We have to admit though, Lois was extremely annoying in this film. Well, this brings us to the end of today's video. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel to get more videos like this one. Your support helps us grow. And tell me what you think about this film. Do you think the elite had a point? Should Superman stop holding back and deliver a harsh judgment to those who do harm? Let me know in the comments below. I read all of them. And if you're watching till now, thank you. I'll see you in another video soon.